All right, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you all know by now that my name is Joey Aristegi, and I will be doing my presentation today on the hot button issue of legalizing marijuana. So, what is the point? You guys might be asking, like, why do I care if the sketchy guy down the street buys his marijuana from the U.S. government or he buys it from some guy in a white van named Skip from the trailer park? It doesn't really make a difference to you guys, right? Well, first you got to take a broad view, and I mean really broad for this one. So, what do we want to do as a society? That's an extremely broad question. So basically, the goal of every generation is to make the next generation have an easier time to thrive. So you want to make the next generation's life a little bit easier. That's the goal. Everyone wants to make the world a better place. So in regards to this, you have a quote from Winston Churchill to try to tell you guys how important it is to not only just talk about making the world a better place, but to actually put it into action. So, what is a better future? Well, it's kind of a broad term, but three ways to kind of characterize or categorize it are: you want to have a future that is financially secure, you want to have a future that is full of freedom, so people are able to express themselves, and you want to have a future that has a decrease in crime and specifically violence. So, what does marijuana have to do with all of this? It doesn't really make sense right now, but that's the whole point of this. So let's start with financial security. As you can see, that's Johnny Manziel, financial secure. So let's take a look at the marijuana industry. So the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services did a study, and they recorded that around 10% of people in the United States ages 12 or 13 and up have used marijuana in the past year. And then one thing that's not in that is actually 40% of the U.S. population have said that they've used marijuana sometime in their lifetime. So that's a big chunk of the U.S. population, because if you're going by just by the people that have done it in the last year, that's 1 in 10 people, or 1 in 10 people 13 years or older. So right there in the middle, you kind of have the breakdown of the individual sale and buying of marijuana. And then at the bottom you have the kind of the overall view of the marijuana industry. So if you calculate the population bubbles and the inflation and deflation of prices on marijuana, you can get estimates that the marijuana industry is nearly worth $100 billion annually. So that's a huge, huge business right there. So how can the U.S. government take marijuana and make it into something useful? Well, one way to do that is through taxation. So the way the U.S. government can make money off of marijuana is by taxing it. So when someone buys it, they get a certain percentage of the total resale value, and that percentage would go towards the U.S. government. So in 2010, a study that was published in the Huffington Post, they came out with the statistic that in 2010, $8.7 billion would have been raised through taxes if the United States government had complete control over the marijuana industry at the time. So to put that into perspective, you got to look at one of the highest taxed commodities on the U.S. market nowadays, and that would be tobacco. Tobacco is around 77% taxes, the resale value. So it's very much taxed, and you have a huge, huge consumer base. So in 2013, the U.S. government had $4 billion in revenue from taxes on tobacco. So as you can see, with $8.7 billion in revenue, that's more than double the amount you would get from taxing tobacco, which is a hugely taxed commodity as is. And since that study of what the marijuana industry would have raised through taxation was done in 2010, if you calculated inflation and the increase in consumers, that would actually be much higher nowadays. So you can see how much money the United States government could make if they decided to tax marijuana. So to kind of give you a reason for why this is an important deal is the United States national debt right now is at $18.78 trillion. So, and that goes up billions of dollars each day. So when it comes to United States tax income, or any kind of income for that matter, it's very important because right now we're in a financial crisis and we're struggling to get anywhere in the green. So if we can get $8.7 billion or more in income through taxation of marijuana, that would be a huge help. And it's needed at this time. So the next thing is freedom. So when it comes to freedom, I'm referring to the idea that when it comes to the United States, people are allowed to indulge in certain vices. And those vices are mainly, they're completely regulated by the United States government, but they're chosen by the government. There are certain vices that are illegal, such as marijuana right now, and then you have other vices that, like heroin and cocaine, that are also illegal. So right now, if you're going to talk about marijuana, here's some facts about the drug. So there's never been a recorded overdose on marijuana. So this kind of proves, or it doesn't prove, it shows that marijuana is not really, it's not really an immediate threat or to the human body. You know, there's not a whole lot of bodily harm that comes from the use of marijuana. So when you compare that to other legal vices such as alcohol and tobacco, tobacco and alcohol lead to many, many deaths each year, which I will talk about in a minute. And marijuana, for the most part, has very little negative effects when it comes to bodily harm. And one kind of negative effect that people like to talk about when it comes to marijuana is driving under the influence, which would still be illegal if marijuana was made for legal sale in the United States. But regardless, the amount of deaths caused each year from intoxicated driving due to marijuana are very much negligible in comparison to the deaths caused by distracted driving and through drunk driving. So that's not really a big point when it comes to the debate about legalizing marijuana. So another statistic right here is that marijuana is not associated with violence. And it's actually classified as a psychoactive sedative. And the reason I bring that up is drugs that are legal, such as alcohol, they have a tendency to make people act in certain ways they wouldn't act when they are not under the influence. And I'm referring to a lot of cases involving alcohol when you have altercations at bars and domestic violence. There's many, many cases in regards to those things. So, and people like to bring up that marijuana also is a trigger when it comes to committing violent crimes. And this scientific study kind of disproves that theory. And then another fact about marijuana is that it has not been, there's not a scientific link that, that puts marijuana as a cause when it comes to cancer. So that's also relevant to this conversation because you have two other legal vices such as alcohol and tobacco, both of which have links that lead to cancer down the way, especially tobacco. Let's see. So legal drugs such as cigarettes and alcohol. Cigarettes lead to about 500,000 deaths a year. Alcohol cause about 1 in 10 deaths among working age adults. Both are physically addictive, both are legal to buy. Marijuana is illegal, but those are legal. There's not really a whole lot of statistics or facts backing up that. Thirdly is decreasing crime. So when it comes to crime involving marijuana, a lot has to do with cartels in Mexico. These cartels are trying to push their product into the United States and use violence as a means to do that. As you can see from these statistics, violence in Mexico is huge. It has 164,000 deaths a year, which is 1.5 times as many civilian deaths in Afghanistan and Iraq during the time from 2007 to the present day. Also, you have domestic crime, which is in regards to the United States, there are millions of arrests when it comes to marijuana each year. Blacks are 3.7 times more likely, so that has a lot to do with race relations in the United States today too, which is also at the forefront of media. So what's the solution to these problems?
Quick wrap up, Joey, we're at 20 seconds over.
The solution is legalization. This would solve it would help solve the financial crisis. It would allow people to engage in these safe alternative devices, and it would also cut down on domestic and international crime. Thank you, and I hope you learned something about marijuana today and the process of legalizing it, and thank you very much.